da da. Ay 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 da 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 da. A good Erev Shabbos, my holy sisters and brothers. It's great to be with you as we're getting ready for Shabbos. Let's light up the darkness. Who is with us as we do some beautiful learning? And today's really beautiful. It's a whole series of Agadic teachings based on the Manna and some Proverbs. So it's just one of those great pages where there's, just one pearl of wisdom after another. Today's going to be a lot of fun. Who is with us? Yehudit saying Shabbat Shalom, wishing Nina, Sal, and everyone a restful and rejuvenating Shabbos from Florence, South Carolina. Sharon in New Jersey, Rose in New Mexico, Paul in Chicago, Renee in Indianapolis, Stephen in New Hampshire, James in Indianapolis, John in Maine, Paula in the Great Northwest, Tom in Pennsylvania, Paula, there's that smile. Helena, great to have you, Helena, from Finland. Paula saying Shalom, Chuck in South Florida. Welcome, everybody. We're going to just jump right into it. There's so much good stuff in today's page, much of it memorable. So let's just jump right in. Where are we holding? We're on page 75, Ayin Hey, here in Tractate Yoma. These are the laws of Yom Kippur. We're in chapter 8, and unlike the previous chapters, which was much more about Yom Kippur in the ancient world, when the tabernacle or the temple were standing, chapter 8 is all about how we, laws that are still in effect. Namely, this command in the Torah that on Yom Kippur you shall afflict yourselves, you shall afflict your soul. What does that mean? The sages have defined that as fasting. We're going to abstain from eating and drinking. And we're not going to smear oil on ourselves. We're not going to wear shoes, meaning leather shoes. And we're not going to have conjugal relations, no marital relations on the day of Yom Kippur. And they derived yesterday where they get that all of these matters are included in afflicting your soul, but not purposely making yourself suffer. We're not going to sit in a sauna. We're not going to sit in the cold and make ourselves suffer. We're simply going to abstain from these things that we might otherwise do. So yesterday it came up that while we were defining affliction, the word manna was associated with affliction, that somehow God afflicted us in the matter of the manna when the children of Israel were wandering in the wilderness. And that was so strange because the manna was like the ultimate gift. It was this incredibly nourishing and incredibly tasty food that came every day. In what way could that be considered an affliction that Moses, in his final sermon in the book of Deuteronomy, would associate manna with an affliction? And so the sages said, well, there were two possibilities. Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi disagreed on this matter, and one said, well, you're unsure if they're going to, if you're unsure if you're going to have it tomorrow. A person with bread in his basket is living in a different world than a person without bread in his basket, even if both of their bellies are full at the moment. The guy who also has bread in his basket is calm because he knows he has food to eat for tomorrow. But the guy, even though he just ate a meal and he has an empty cupboard, is worried about tomorrow. And likewise with the manna, it showed up there every morning what we needed, and double on Friday, like today, so you would have enough for Shabbos without gathering on Shabbos. But there was no certainty that the manna would come again tomorrow or Sunday if it's Friday. And that uncertainty could be an affliction. And the other one who disagreed with him said, no, what it actually was the manna always looked the same. It was this kind of white film that appeared in the mornings. And even though it tasted like many other foods, whatever your favorite food was is what the manna would taste like. But its texture and but especially its appearance was always the same. It didn't match the taste of it. And something is lost, right? There's something beautiful about the presentation of food. We like looking at good tasting food. And since the appearance aspect of the food, even though it tasted amazing, it was always the same look, that was a kind of affliction. That lead to, since now that we brought up Rabbi Asi and Rabbi Ami and how they disagreed about a verse in the Bible, we started a digression about other verses upon which they disagree, what it means, and we're going to be continuing that today. So near the top of the A side of page 75, the Gemara explains another verse in Proverbs. Proverbs 12:25. If there is care in a man's heart, let him quash it. Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi disagree over the verse's meaning. One of them says he should forcefully push it, yeschena, out of his mind. One who worries should banish his concerns from his thoughts. He shouldn't worry about it. He should force himself not to think about his cares. I mean, that doesn't mean ignore them. If there's solutions available to you, if there's a way you can figure out to get out of your difficulties, you do it. But if you're simply dwelling on your difficulties and it's not helping you in any way, you're just becoming anxious because you're turning the matter over and over in your mind with no productive outcome from that. So stop thinking about things that you can't do anything about. That's one of them. The other one says, and he should tell, yesichena, others his concerns, which will lower his anxiety. So they would agree that it's worthless to just keep pondering the stuff that stresses you out over and over in your mind. One of them says, just stop thinking about it. Not easy to do. The other one says, talk it out with somebody who cares about someone, will listen to your troubles, and then you will get maybe some perspective that will reduce the anxiety about those things. Another verse upon which they disagree. This is Isaiah 65:25. And dust shall be the serpent's food. Right? Obviously, Isaiah was referring to the serpent in the matter of the Garden of Eden, who suggested to Eve that the fruit of the garden of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which God had prohibited the humans to eat. He said, "Oh, it's not so bad. You'll just be like the beings up there, the higher spiritual beings, and you won't die." And she was tempted, and then she suggested to Adam that he do the same, etc. We know the outcome. The humans were ejected from the garden because of this sin, and they were punished. They were cursed. The snake was cursed that it would crawl on its belly. That would be its normal mode of existence, and the dust of the earth that it shall eat. It doesn't actually eat dust, of course, but since it's on its belly and what it's eating is always on the ground where it is, everything that it eats is going to have some dust along with it. So Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi dispute the verse's meaning. One said, even if the serpent eats all the delicacies in the world, they will still taste like dust. But the other one said, even if it eats all the delicacies in the world, its mind is unsettled until it also eats some dust. That one's kind of interesting. I'm a big fan of the Aubrey Maturin novels. I've probably mentioned them before. I just, read this set of 20 novels already. I'm on my 5th time through. They made the movie Master and Commander based on these novels. But one thing that the author, Patrick O'Brien, often mentions is that the sailors, who were a very superstitious bunch, and were often away for months or years on end in these voyages in the wooden sailing ships of the British Navy going around the world, really literally tempest tossed. I mean, they would withstand storms. We can't even imagine what these guys went through. And they worked hard. Oh my gosh. And they did not eat well for the most part. But at any rate, an attribute of the sailors in that time, and who knows, maybe sailors today have the same thing, they like what they're used to, right? There's something about what they're used to. They were a very superstitious bunch because, new things could really be dangerous. I mean, literally, an SOS, right? That's a naval term. Originally, it means save our souls. Because when a ship went down, it would often go down with all souls aboard, right? No survivors. That could happen in terrible hurricanes and cyclones. If a fire broke out on a wooden ship, as you can imagine, especially a military ship with a powder magazine, and the whole thing could blow up. And there were just many times when ships went down and all hands were lost. So new things, were something that they were suspicious of. And so they wouldn't really be at ease unless they were in a familiar environment. Now, all of us have this tendency, that we kind of just get used to things. Even the oppressor that is sometimes better than the freedom that is mysterious and that we do not know. And sometimes we choose to stay in a jail cell, as D.H. Lawrence said, with the key to the cell dangling on a chain around our neck where it dangles inert, right? So people will often just choose the familiar. And so maybe the one who's saying about the snake that it could eat all the delicacies of the world, but its mind won't be settled until it eats the dust to which it has become accustomed, maybe a reference to that. With regard to the same topic, it was taught in a Baraisa. Rabbi Yosei said, "Come and see that the attribute of the Holy One, blessed be He, is different than the attribute of flesh and blood." This is a kind of familiar trope that we see in the Talmud, where we see how God's ways are so different than human ways. The attribute of flesh and blood is that one who seeks to provoke another harasses him in all aspects of his life. But the Holy One, blessed be He, does not act in this way. He cursed the serpent, and what happened? When the serpent goes up to the roof its food is with it. And when it comes down, its food is with it. Consequently, the curse that it suffers does not ruin its life, but rather benefits it. I'm not sure I completely understand that one. But now we're going to get a few more examples of this idea that when God punishes, He punishes you for your sin, but He only punishes you with respect to what you did. And then in the rest of your life, you still have a whole and intact relationship with God, and even the punishment can turn into a blessing. Similarly, He cursed Canaan that he should be the servant of servants, but he benefits somewhat from this. He eats with what his master eats and drinks what his master drinks and does not worry like a free man does. He cursed the woman, and yet everyone pursues her to marry her. He cursed the land after the sin of Adam and Eve, and yet everyone is sustained from it. Even when God is angry, He does not punish His creations severely. He metes out measure for measure, a correct punishment for whatever it was that happened, and then the rest of the relationship is intact. This is different than the way humans treat each other. Often when we get mad at somebody, we're just mad about everything about them. We don't want to know from them. We want to just sever the ties, sever the relationship, and harass them and hound them in every aspect of life. It would be so much better if we, when we take offense or we're angry about something, we could just be specific about what it is that person did that we disagree with, and acknowledge that, the rest of the relationship can remain intact. Sometimes we do that with our loved ones, and sometimes we don't. We could do better. The Gemara cites more verses that pertain to the same issue. Rav and Shmuel disagree with regard to the following verse, Numbers 11:15. "We remember the fish which we ate in Egypt for nothing." One said the verse is referring literally to fish. So this is the children of Israel wandering in the desert, being sustained by God at all times. And at a certain moment, they became, they got sick of the manna. They wanted to eat something different. And they started saying, we remember how good we had it in Egypt because we ate all kinds of different foods. Like forgetting that they were enslaved and living a horrible existence, and now they're free men sustained directly from the hand of God. Imagine complaining about such a state, and yet we did that. So we remember the fish, which we ate in Egypt for nothing. So one of them says, Rav and Shmuel disagree, one of them says the verse is referring literally to fish. And the other one said the verse is referring to incestuous relations that the Torah had not yet forbidden. And the people cried once the Torah was given at Mount Sinai, and now laws came to us that we didn't have before. Like, there's a certain list of people that are forbidden to you. You cannot marry, you cannot have sex with people who are related to you in certain ways. And so the Gemara explains, the one who said that the verse is referring to fish bases his explanation on the verse. As it is written, which we ate. We remember the fish which we ate in Egypt. So this means what we actually ate. So we remember the fish out in the desert. We're not eating fish, right? We're eating manna. There might be some other things that we eat, but we're not eating fish. And we miss eating fish. But the other one who said, and the one who said that the verse is actually referring to forbidden sexual relations, also bases his explanation on the verse, as it is written, for nothing. We remember the fish which we ate in Egypt for nothing. So this phrase for nothing somehow is going to suggest that the children of Israel, once they'd been given the Torah, missed that they had, people available to them as potential spouses, which were within the family, and now that's no longer permitted. Now, certainly the people did not actually eat fish for free. You always have to pay for your food in some way. So what is this verse for nothing? Well, they could marry anyone without paying for that. So somehow that's an allusion to that. So the Gemara asks, and according to the one who said that the verse is referring to forbidden relations, but isn't it written, which we ate? So how could you say that this has to do with forbidden sexual relations? The verse is talking about eating. And the Gemara answers, the Torah employed a euphemistic expression. Eating is used as a euphemism for sexual relations. As it is written, Proverbs 30:20, so is the way of an adulterous woman. She eats and wipes her mouth and says, I have done no wickedness. Using this as an example of any kind of sinner who's truly a sinner, who, commits the sin and then has no shame about it, just moves on like, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. And according to the one who said, and there, that verse, which talks about adultery as an example of the sin, is also employing the words that she eats and wipes her mouth as if she's done nothing. And so eating could be connected, right? Could be a euphemism for having forbidden sexual relations. So according to the one who said that the verse is referring to fish, we missed the fish that we ate in Egypt for nothing. What is the meaning of the phrase for nothing? Obviously we paid for it, if only with our labor. And the people brought, but the person would answer, the sage would answer, the people brought the fish from the river, which was ownerless property, since the Egyptians obviously would not have given them free food. So in other words, anybody could walk down to the Nile and go fishing, cast a net or a fishing pole, come out with some fish and eat it. So we didn't have to pay for the fish if we were willing to go fishing. So the master said, another sage said, when the Jews drew water from the river, the Holy One, blessed be He, prepared little fish for them in the water, and they swam into their jugs. So it wasn't even that difficult to catch fish in the Nile. The Gemara comments, granted, I'm skipping that part. I'm going down just a little bit. I'm just to skip down a little bit because there's so much to cover. So the Gemara returns to the same verse, Numbers 11:5, about the children of Israel complaining in the wilderness how good we had it in Egypt. And the verse states, we remember the fish which we ate in Egypt for nothing. And it continues, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. Right now, think how crazy this is, right? In Egypt, we were slaves. We did not have our freedom. We were doing back-breaking labor all day long, living in slave quarters, and probably eating gruel. And now that we've become accustomed to living in this incredible encampment in the wilderness surrounding the tabernacle, with God's presence in our midst and miraculous food fed to us every day, but we got used to it. Now we're complaining and say, well, in Egypt we did eat different kinds of food. And specifically, we remember the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, and the onions and the garlic. Now, Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi disagree about the verse's meaning once again. One of them said, they tasted the flavor of all types of food in the manna. But why did they mention these 5 foods specifically that they remember from Egypt? Cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. So one of them says they could taste the flavor of all types of food in the manna, but they cried because they could not taste the tastes of these 5 foods that they mentioned. And the other sage says they tasted the flavors of all types of food as well as their textures. The sensation was so strong that it seemed to them like they were eating those very foods. However, with the foods they listed, cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic, the people only tasted their flavor, but not their texture. With regard to the manna, the Torah further states it was white, levan. Levan means white. It was white, like coriander seed, and its flavor was like wafers made of honey. That's Exodus 16:31. And the Gemara questions this. Since coriander is brown, it's not white. So how do we explain it? It's described as being like coriander seed and like being white, but coriander seed is brown. So Rabbi Asi said the manna was round like coriander seed, but its color was white like a pearl. And this was also taught in a baraisa. Coriander, gad, is so named because it is similar to flax seeds on their stalks, which are bound, a good, similar word, in a bundle, same root. Others say it was called coriander, gad, because it is similar to a tale, Haggadah. Right, the Haggadah of Passover, that word Haggadah means tale, like a story, which draws a person's heart toward it, just like water, which is essential for life, draws a person toward it. It was taught in another baraisa. Why is it called Gad? Because it told Magid, right, or a Magid is a storyteller, right? So a Magid is one who tells a Haggadah, a story. So because it told the Jewish people the answer to questions of uncertainty, such as the paternity of a baby. What? What are you talking about, Sal? How can that be? And that's why title today shows that the manna also worked as a lie detector. How did this work? For example, if a woman in the encampment of the children of Israel divorced her husband and then remarried quickly within 2 months of the divorce, and 7 months later gave birth to a baby. So it's unclear if the baby, she didn't do anything wrong. She was married and then divorced and quickly remarried. But the question is, does the baby, is it a 9-month baby from the first husband or a 7-month baby from the second husband? They didn't have DNA paternity tests that they could use. So what would happen? The manna would tell them if the baby was born after 9 months and belongs to the first husband, or if the baby was born after 7 months and belongs to the second husband. How did the manna do this? Since the manna was collected by each family based on the number of biological members of the family, the manna established the baby's paternity. When they would gather the manna in the mornings, whether they gathered a lot or a little, they ended up with the exact amount that they needed to feed their family that day. So if there was an extra portion in that family's manna, right, it would tell them that her new family, it would tell her that that baby belongs to the new family. But if the portion arrived at her first husband's house, then that would say that he was the father and he had an extra mouth to feed. And so there, it's not a lie detector, it's just so much as a paternity test. But we'll actually get a little further down where it even functions like a lie detector. And the manna was called white, levan, because it whitened Israel's sins. The people feared that if they sinned, the manna would not continue to fall. Consequently, they devoted themselves to introspection and repentance. If only we could acquire that attitude today. If we would feel like, wow, I have so many blessings in my life. God is showering me in blessings. I have a roof over my head. I have food in my cupboard. I have loved ones around me. Maybe I should express my gratitude first by expressing my gratitude, and second by behaving as well as I can to keep earning the right to enjoy these blessings. Similarly, it was taught in a baraisa. Rabbi Yosei says, just like the prophet would tell the Jewish people what was in the holes and what was in the cracks of their souls, the holes and cracks of their souls, a prophet can tell you what's actually in the holes and cracks of your soul, highlighting the sins of the people, what they choose not to look at, right? The sins among them that they conveniently ignore, and a prophet comes and tells you, no, look, look what's going on in the holes and cracks of your souls. So too, the manna clarified for Israel what was in the holes and what was in the cracks. How so? If two people came before Moses for a judgment, one saying, "You stole my slave," and the other one saying, "I did not steal him, rather you sold him to me," Moses would say to them, "In the morning there will be a judgment." How is the matter resolved? If on the following day the slave found his omer of manna in his first master's house, it would be clear that he was stolen because the manna still came to the first owner. And if on the following day the slave found his omer of manna in the second master's house, it would be clear that it was a legitimate purchase, and the manna now was falling miraculously for the second household. Similarly, if a man and a woman came to Moses for a judgment, the man said, "She sinned against me, and therefore I may divorce her and not be obligated to pay her divorce settlement." In other words, she cheated on him, and so he can divorce her and not pay her the divorce settlement. But she says, "He sinned against me, and therefore I am entitled to the full settlement from the marriage contract." Moses would say to them, "In the morning, there will be a judgment. The following day, if the measure of manna was found in her husband's house, it would be clear that she sinned against him. The fact that her nourishment was given to his household signifies the fact that he had respected her appropriately and is worthy of nourishing her. If her measure of manna was found in her father's house, it would be clear that her husband, sinned against her. Her nourishment has not been given to his household, signifying that he has been disrespectful to her and is not worthy of nourishing her. And so she returns to her father's house, where her measure of manna appears, and her father will nourish her once again. With regard to the manna, it is written bread, Exodus 16:4. And it is written cakes, Numbers 11:8. And it is also written and ground it in mills, Numbers 11:8, implying that it was neither bread nor a cake. So how can these texts be reconciled? What was the manna like? Was it like bread? Was it like cake? Or was it like some kind of a substance that needed to be ground in a mill and turned into flour with which they could bake? Which was it? And how does the Gemara reconcile these texts? For the righteous, it fell as baked bread. For average people, as unbaked cakes. And for the wicked, it came in an unprocessed form, and consequently, they ground it in a mill. So the manna itself, came in a more, ready-to-eat fashion, depending on how righteous you were. And the verse states, or beat it in a mortar. And Rabbi Yehuda said that Rav said, some say it was Rabbi Chama, the son of Rabbi Hanina. This teaches that women's perfumes fell for the Jewish people with the manna because they are an item that is beaten in a mortar. And the verse continues, and cooked it in a pot, Numbers 11:8. And Rabbi Chama said this teaches that cooking spices fell for the Jewish people along with the manna. I'm just going to skip a little bit. Further teaching with respect to the manna. And its taste was the taste of a cake. Shad. Where is that? Shad. Shad baked with hashamin, with oil. Right? So its taste was the taste of a cake baked with oil. So a cake here means something that is unbaked, right? Like dough that is unbaked. And so now it's going to be baked with oil. So that the taste is being described as this like incredibly, nourishing and scrumptious honey baked cake, or oil and honey. But I'm sorry, baked with oil. So here what we're saying is it's like fried dough, right? Like a churro. If you like the taste of fried dough, you would really like manna. So Rabbi Abahu said, Shad means breast. So just as a baby tastes different flavors from the mother's breast, since the taste of the milk changes somewhat depending on what foods his mother eats, so too with the manna. Every time that the Jewish people ate the manna, they found in it many different flavors based on their preferences. And there are those who say that the word is written as shed and means literally a demon, right? So shad is a breast, like a woman's breast. Shed refers to a demon, a shade. So which is it, right? Is it nourishing like a breast, or is it? Why would it be related to a demon? How so? Just as a demon changes into different forms and colors, so too the manna changed into different flavors. Kind of a negative association, but the attribute is the same. That just like the mother's milk has different tastes depending on what the mother has eaten, and the baby can taste that, so too, just as a demon sort of changes its form, so does an angel for that matter. But the point is that the one eating the manna could taste all these different flavors in the manna. So the verse states, and Moses said, this shall be when the Lord will give you in the evening meat to eat, and in the morning bread to the full. Exodus 16:8. And Tana, a rabbi of the Mishna, taught in the name of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korcha, the meat that the Jewish people asked for inappropriately, since they had manna and they did not need meat, was given to them inappropriately in a way that was unpleasant. Right? When they demanded meat, God said, I'll give you meat, all right. I'll give you so much meat, it'll be coming out of your noses. And that's when that huge flock of quail were brought, and they had bird meat to eat, like more than, God showed them, yeah, because you keep whining and complaining. I'll give you what you wanted, but it won't make you happy. However, bread, so the meat was not essential since the manna was a perfectly nourishing food. We didn't need meat at that time. However, bread, which is essential, so the people asked for that appropriately. Therefore, it was given to them appropriately in the morning when there was time to prepare it. And the Gemara comments, from here, the Torah teaches etiquette, that it is proper to eat meat only at night. As Moses said to the children of Israel, this shall be when the Lord will give you in the evening meat to eat. Exodus 16:8. And the Gemara asks, but wait a minute. Yes, on yesterday's page, didn't Abaye say that someone who has a meal should eat it during the daytime so that he can see it? And we said yesterday, just like the manna doesn't have the appearance of the food that it tastes like, when you do eat foods, you want to see the presentation. You should be able to see your food if possible. And so the Gemara answers, we mean to say like day. It is not necessary to eat the food in the daytime as long as one can see what he is eating. If you have a lamp, if you have a candle, then it's fine. So Rabbi Acha Bar Yaakov said, at the beginning, the Jewish people were like chickens pecking at the garbage. Anytime there was food, they grabbed it and ate it. Until Moses came and set specific times to eat, as the verse implies. He set meal times for them in the morning and in the evening. It was like we needed to be civilized. We were coming out of slavery in Egypt, and we had, slaves just eat whenever they can. It's so hard to get a nourishing meal when you're a slave. And then we left, and then we're out in the desert, and then we're worried, what are we going to eat in the desert? So anytime food appears, we ate it. So finally Moses comes along and says, look, you're going to eat like princes and princesses. You're going to eat like ladies and gentlemen. You're going to eat at the times that make sense to eat, in the morning and in the evening. I'm going to skip down a little bit. We are now on the B side of page 75, about halfway down. Furthermore, with regard to the manna, it is written, and when the layer of dew lifted, behold. Right, I noticed that today reading the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, which I try to read every day. And it said when Abraham looked up, raised his eyes, and behold, there was a ram caught in the thicket by its horns. And this word behold, it's very biblical. It appears a lot. We kind of read over it. But what does it mean? You could easily, leave out that word, right? And when the layer of dew lifted upon the face of the wilderness, there lay a fine flaky substance, as fine as the frost on the ground. Why does it say, and when the layer of dew lifted, behold, upon the face of the wilderness, there lay a fine flaky substance? That word behold, it's great. It's great. I feel like behold is something where God is saying, stop, look, appreciate, take a moment, Probably we should say, behold, more often. At any rate, the layer of dew lifted, and behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a fine, flaky substance, as fine as the frost on the ground. Exodus 16:14, indicating that the dew covered the manna. But at Numbers 11:9, it is written, and when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it, meaning that the manna fell on top of the dew. How can these verses be reconciled? Rabbi Yosei, the son of Rabbi Hanina, said there was dew above and dew below, with the manna in between, and the manna appeared as if it were placed in a box. And this is why at our Shabbos table, we have the breadboard, and we have challah, and then we have the challah cover, right? And so when we make a bracha, when we make a blessing on the challah on Friday night, there are different traditions how people do this. This is how we do it. Very common tradition is we lift up the breadboard with the challah inside and the challah cover on top, and we make the blessing. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who brings forth bread from the ground. And we are recalling the manna that the children of Israel ate in the wilderness, where there was a layer of dew, and then the manna, and then a layer of dew on top. We recreate that with the board, the bread, and the challah cover. The verse describes the manna as a fine, flaky substance. Reish Lakish said, flaky, mechuspas, means it was a substance that dissolved, mach, on the palm, pas, of the hand. Since it was so fine, it dissolved upon contact. Rabbi Yochanan said it was a substance that was absorbed in all 248 limbs of the body, the numerical equivalent of the word mechuspas. And the Gemara expresses surprise at this. If one calculates the value of the letters in the word mechuspas, it is written, it is more. It actually comes up to 256, not 248. And Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak said mechuspas is written in the Torah without the letter vav, which is 6. And so how come, therefore, the letter the total is exactly 248? I'm a little confused about that, but we're just going to keep going. The sages taught, the Torah states, and he caused the manna to rain upon them for food, and he gave them of the grain of heaven. Man did eat the bread of the mighty, Abirim. Psalms 78:24-25. Bread of the mighty is bread that the ministering angels eat. And this is the statement of Rabbi Akiva, that like the manna was like the bread of the angels. That's what Rabbi Akiva is saying. When these words were said before Rabbi Yishmael, he said to them, go and tell Akiva, you have made a mistake. Do the ministering angels eat bread? It is already stated about Moses, when he ascended on high, when he was he went up Mount Sinai and then went, up into the heavens, right? When he was receiving the Torah for 40 days and nights, the first time he went up, and Moses said about that later at Deuteronomy 9:9, bread I did not eat, and water I did not drink. If even a human who ascends on high does not need to eat, certainly the ministering angels do not need to eat. Rather, how do I establish the meaning of the word abirim? It can be explained as bread that was absorbed into all 248 limbs. Avarim sounds similar, so that there was no waste. This is the idea that when the children of Israel were eating manna in the desert, it was a perfectly nourishing food that was absorbed into all their limbs, and so there was nothing left over for pooping. Like, people didn't poop if all they're eating was manna. It would just be perfectly for them, and they wouldn't need to excrete afterward. So the Gemara asks, but if so, how do I establish the verses? Deuteronomy 23:14, and you shall have a spade among your weapons. And it shall be that when you relieve yourself outside, you shall dig with it and shall turn back and cover your excrement. Right? So among the many laws in the Torah, it's this idea that in an encampment, right, a military encampment where you're preparing for war, okay, so you're going to have your weapons with you, but just as important as your weapons is a little shovel, like a camping shovel, what are you going to use it for? When you have to go excrete, you're going to leave the camp, you're going to go out to a private place away from the camp, you're going to dig a hole, do your business in it, and then cover up the hole. You might think since you've already left the camp, okay, you don't have to cover up your stuff, but you do, right? So the Torah teaches us to be fastidious in this manner. But the point, why is this being brought up here? Because, okay, the God told Moses to tell the children in the wilderness that they have to cover up their poop. So clearly they were pooping, but if the whole time they're in the wilderness, they're eating manna, and if you eat manna, you don't poop. So how do we reconcile these verses? So how do we reconcile? The Gemara explains this waste was not a byproduct of the manna. It was from food items that the Gentile merchants sold them. They were out in the desert for 40 years. From time to time, they would come near to towns and other kinds of, habitations, and they would have interaction with the locals. And one of the things they would do is they would buy other kinds of food so that they weren't eating only manna. And when they ate that kind of food, so then, the human system would kick in, and they'd have to go outside the camp, make holes, and excrete. Rabbi Lazar ben Parata disagrees and says the manna caused even items that the Gentile merchants sold them to be completely digested, so that even other food that they ate produced no waste. But then how do I establish the verse? And you shall have a spade among your weapons. After they sinned, the manna was not as effective. The Holy One, blessed be He, said, initially I said that they would be like the ministering angels who do not produce waste. Now I will trouble them to walk 3 parasangs to leave the camp in order to relieve themselves. Right? So you have to leave the camp in any case. That's actually as much as I'm going to be teaching today. So if you have comments or questions, get them in. So you have to leave the camp in any case to go poop. This was a camp of 2 million people. So if you have to leave the camp to go to the bathroom, that's a long walk. You're very grateful that if you're just eating manna, and the manna even has the further effect of other foods, it just causes complete perfect digestion. You don't have to relieve yourself. Very nice. But as the people's spiritual level started to fall down and they sinned, the incident of the golden calf certainly, and other sins that we commit in the wilderness, particularly the panic in the incident of the spies, which led to, instead of a 2-year journey, a 40-year journey. And so then, the people's level had fallen. God said, okay, well, you're going to have to, walk to relieve yourselves. That's just going to be part of the consequences that you brought upon yourself. That's what I've got for us today. Let me check comments and questions. PK, so this word behold, right, which I say such a biblical word, and I think it would be nice to use it more in our common everyday speech. PK comments, behold, to see clearly, right? To see clearly. Hine, to see clearly. See it, right? I think good, very good, PK. I think it's that same idea. God is saying pause, take a good look, consider what it means. PK is like, be even more direct. Before you even go to sort of asking yourself, what does it mean? See it, right? So often, we just walk through life and stuff comes through our field of vision and we don't notice it at all, right? And so behold could mean just take a moment and look and see. There's all these videos that you can find where, people are it's so easy to predict where people's focus will lie, that they won't notice other things going through the screen, right? Like if somebody's bouncing a ball, you're going to be looking at the bouncing ball, and you won't even notice that a 6-foot person in a chicken costume walked through the screen the other way. We have to train ourselves to see what is in front of us, and perhaps the word behold alludes to that. Sharon says, to me, behold is as if to say pay attention. Very good, I agree. Sharon also says, my understanding of the challah cover was not to cause embarrassment to the bread. After the blessing of the wine, the hand washing blessing is linked to the bread blessing as if one. We therefore uncover the challah before saying the blessing for bread, sprinkle it with salt, and then eat. So like I said, there are different traditions. Normally, like the bread, would have priority. The bread is what makes a meal as opposed to a snack. So when there's bread on the table, you should bless that first. But because we're sanctifying the day of Shabbos by our Friday night dinner, we make kiddush first over the wine. So we cover the bread as an illusion, so that the bread won't be embarrassed, as it were, while we're blessing the wine before the bread, giving priority to the wine, which we normally might not do. And so I guess Sharon is saying that in her household, having done that, having made kiddush, then they uncover the bread and they bless the bread with the bread in view. Like I said, there's different traditions on this that are age-old traditions. But a different one is like this, where you hold it up like that with the two layers, suggesting the manna. And some people will also, when they're doing it the way we do it, first they'll make a little cut in the challah, so to sort of begin that process. Then put the cover back on, make the bracha, then uncover and slice the bread. The important thing for those unfamiliar with this custom is that the hand washing, which, as Sharon mentioned, is linked to the eating. We must wash our hands before we eat a meal, meaning before we have bread that's going to define it as a meal. So at our Friday night table, we make the kiddush over the wine, then everybody gets up, they go wash their hands, they say the hand washing blessing, and after you said the hand washing blessing, you cannot talk again, except perhaps to say amen to somebody else's hand washing blessing. You can do that, but you don't talk. You can sing la 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 la, but you don't say words until everybody's back and the leader has made the blessing over the bread, and then you get some bread with some salt, which reminds us of the misfortune of losing the temple. And you don't talk again until you've eaten some bread, right? So it's a very nice moment when everybody's quite focused because they know they can't talk until the bread has been blessed and they've eaten some. Okay, my friends, that's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow night, Shabbos, after Shabbos, with page 76. Have a great Friday afternoon. Don't forget, Sunday, June 27th, this Sunday, it's 17 Tammuz on the Hebrew calendar. That's a fast day, an all-day fast day, which is difficult in the Northern Hemisphere. Long summer day. That fast begins at 4:12 in the morning, ends at 8:48 at night here in LA. But it is also a day to cry out. So Nina really created this, and we're promoting it. A day to cry out. Things are really scary in the world. Many things are going wrong. This incident in Florida now, the people missing is up to 159. Please God, may they be found and found alive. The incident at Meron, the other incident with the bleachers collapsing, all the various bad news we hear every day. Like we did in Egypt, we cried out to God and God heard us. Like we did in Persia, in the book of Esther, we cried out to God and he heard us. It's time to cry out. So on Sunday, very easy to do, to participate in a day to cry out. Just sometime during the day on Sunday, say, help us, God. If you then move to continue the conversation with God, great, keep going. But at least say, help us, God. Sunday is a day to cry out. All the best and have a great Shabbos.